Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this special series on youth mental health, a part of the youth program's Youth Mental Health Initiative. My name's Emmett. I'm a staff here at Dawson in the youth programs, and joining me on this episode today is
Louise, and I'm a youth member of the youth program.
I'm Frank. I've been a staff here since 2013.
I'm Matthew, and I do maintenance in the building and also come as a youth.
Today's episode is on depression and loss or grief. The purpose of this youth mental health podcast is to share community perspectives and how different members in our community deal with these things and cope with them, to share experiences, and hopefully other people who are watching this can learn can learn from. So I'm gonna start off by asking about depression, and it's a pretty open-ended question. How do you think about depression? When you hear depression, or when you have heard about it spoken about in your past, how did you make sense of it? How did you understand it? And if you want to share an experience that you've had with depression, that would be very valuable. Whatever you're comfortable with sharing, please do. It can be someone you know who suffers, and how you dealt with that, or maybe yourself, but whatever that looks like for you. Do you want to kick us off, Louise?
Okay. With depression, I know that in society and social media and stuff, it's there's a light on it, but it's also I think that it's glorified in the sense of everybody's I'm depressed. It looks like a strong community, people are there for each other, but it also always looks like a competition. If you're on TikTok, I see a lot of TikTok comments that are you went through that, well, imagine doing this. And it's always damn, you don't want to just be there for the person.
Right.
It's a little awkward because one person will be I haven't showered for a week, and then they're a week, try 2. And it's what are you trying to prove? That's what I see on social media a lot of the time.
Right. That's a good thing to bring up, actually, because you're right. People do treat it like a competition, and it ignores the fact that how someone experiences depression is going to be different from how someone else experiences it, and for how long, or depending on their experiences in their past, what that specific depression means for them and what that looks like. So that's actually a good thing to bring up, because we should be supporting each other, not treating it like it's competition. Do you have an experience with it firsthand, or?
I feel I get seasonal depression, so winter months.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get out of bed. I'm there's no shot I'm gonna get up and go anywhere. But when it's summer, I'm yo, party all day, party all night. Ain't nobody stopping me.
I hear you. Yeah, seasonal depression, that's very common. I mean, a lot of people go through it. I think it's
one of the most common things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they have lamps for it, like UV lamps, specifically for that. I know someone who got one because, seasonal depression.
But I'm not gonna self-diagnose depression because I don't think I have it. I just know that sometimes everybody gets a little sad.
Yeah. Well, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with it when you do get
sad?
Yeah.
Just kind of sit there.
Just kind of sit there.
In the sadness. Maybe I'll get up and I'll be yo, Dawson's will distract me.
Also, don't knock your self-diagnosis too much either, because it's depression itself and that kind of mental disorder is still very, very new in the realms of what we've been able to study scientifically. Just I'm thinking just 50, 60 years ago in Montreal, they used to treat, we didn't know it was depression at the time, we used to treat certain manic disorders or behavioral disorders with electroshock therapy, lobotomies, just at the Douglas over there, which now offers very modern mental health support services. So don't knock yourself too much if you're going just self-diagnosing. You know yourself,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's important. It's important to be in tune with yourself, to know yourself, and what you said about like just sitting in it, like kind of like the only way out is through,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
that's what I was like.
I hear you.
Like I'm
But
not,
you also mentioned like getting up and coming to Dawson.
yeah, because like everybody here is like usually happy.
Right.
Usually.
Right.
Sometimes it's a little iffy, but most of the time it's like pretty dope.
Mm.
And like the gym kind of pumps you up.
Right.
At least it's like a distracting because there's so much going on.
Well, it's good because, I mean, yeah, you're talking about specific things like being in the gym and everyone's amped up and the staff here, but you're leaning on like a community resource. I know I'm speaking about it like matter of factly, but that is really what it is. And when you are engaged with community and you have these conversations with people, you know that you're not alone in whatever it is you're dealing with, and you have people around you that you can trust to help you through. So that's a very valid way to cope. It's something that I do as well. Thank you, Louise, for sharing. What about you, Frank? How do you think about depression? What have you heard about it? How have you understood it?
Well,
over time?
so having experienced it firsthand, having seen it
Do I just talk closer
take
now?
hold. Yeah. So seeing it firsthand, having seen it take hold of members of my family, having seen it on different people I'm not related to whatsoever, I feel like I've had my fair share of experience, like being surrounded by it. I think it's a far more debilitating condition than a lot of people give credit to. It's not just a matter of like, oh, you're mopey, you don't feel like doing anything. It's a matter of like, it's a coping mechanism for, like, it's a symptom of the trauma that people have dealt with in different ways. Without naming too many names, there was someone in my family. Yeah. Like there was someone in my family who they went through a lot of things when they were a kid. As they grew up in a time where they weren't able to express this to people and get help in a safe way. So they ended up just compounding habits and like unsafe coping mechanisms and stuff on top of each other until eventually it got to the point where they were putting other people's lives at risk because they just didn't know how to do any better. And it's like a block of information. It's a block of, and it's like a two-way street too. In terms of myself, it's really just a matter of, in my case, I feel like it was a lot of like removal or loss of, or lack of opportunities or lack of avenues of activity, yeah, I feel like I'm just going to ramble, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And how you spoke about how it impacted yourself. How did you cope with those feelings and like in times of, when maybe it's like stronger than usual or whatever? How do you deal?
This career I've been working in for the last like 10 years now has been one of the coping mechanisms. Yeah. So instead of taking negative experiences and focusing on them, I would put myself in situations where I would create the opposite of that for other people.
Okay.
So that was one. There were some other not so great ones. I formed several, what's the word I'm looking for? Like unhealthy codependent relationships, like attachments with like friends, loved ones, significant others, all that stuff. And just, you know what? Actually, do people here watch Marvel shows?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody watch Moon Knight?
Yes.
No, I have not seen it yet.
Okay, so I'm not gonna spoil it.
Go ahead, spoil it.
But the most recent episode dealt with somebody who basically like created an alternate self to dissociate themselves from the stuff that they were dealing with.
Okay.
So a description often used for this kind of behavior is going on autopilot.
Okay.
So that was a coping mechanism I would often use.
I see.
So during my time away from work or away from family, I would basically be on autopilot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That episode, I watched it with Cursor, and I cried so much. I had to redo my makeup.
Yeah.
I was noticeably uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking for comfort, or maybe not comfort, maybe that's not the right word, but seeking joy in whatever capacity that looks like in another person is often the easiest. Like it's a common thing. Like I've done it too. You know what I mean? It's easy to do. It's easy to fall into that trap of, well, this person makes me feel good with, like, if they're just an outlet and I can talk to somebody, yeah, I know what you mean. It's easy to fall into that, and
Yep. And
and it makes it worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you almost feel like you're burdening people or putting something on them that isn't for them, So, yeah, it's tough. That's tough to deal with too.
Yeah, and it creates like for example, let's say you and I were just hanging out, like we're homies, we're catching I don't know, hot dogs somewhere, working out, whatever. It's like, to you, we're just two friends hanging out. To me, you're like, oh man, you're my best friend. Like, we're hanging out. This is awesome. This is amazing. And then I'm like, oh no, Emmett looked at me a certain way. Is that like, is he not going to talk to me anymore? Is he like mad at me? Like, is he just going to, like, what's going to happen? It's like you start to kind of get...
You're hypersensitive to things that you perceive as signals that someone else is maybe completely oblivious to.
And then you act on those.
Exactly. Yes, and that's what gets you in way more trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not. Thank you for bringing that up, Frank, because that's a very valuable perspective. I didn't think about that until you brought that up, and it was something that I was able to recognize. Like, oh yeah, I do that too, or I have done that in the past. And you're absolutely right. It creates more problems in the long run and makes the depression worse.
Yeah, and just to like put a cap on all of that. I find that a lot of it revolves around power dynamics. So whether it's you feel like a lack of power on your own part, or you're giving power to other people, or other people just end up having a lot of power over you because of how you're perceiving your relationship with them.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really just identifying like what makes you feel like you're lacking power, and then trying to find ways to gain power yourself without having to take it from other people.
Yeah.
So,
I have a friend like that.
That's
it. Well, no.
All right, that's good. No, that's fine. It's fine.
That's it.
You don't have to follow up on it if you don't want to.
But I don't want to take up time.
I mean, you're not taking up time. We got time.
Because we're in the same class, and ever since then, like, she's been, like, attached to me. And, like, sometimes you're just not in the mood, right?
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes I'll go to school tired, and I'll give, like a head nod, and, like, yeah, I'm listening, but I'm not talking to you. And then she'll be like, are you mad at me? Oh, please don't be mad at me. What did I do? And I'm like, no, I'm just not in the mood right now. She's like, are you sure? Are you mad at me? And I'm like, I'm good. Like, nothing's wrong.
Yeah. That's exactly what it looks like. And, like, in the moment when your friend was, like, acting that way or asking you those questions, did you think, like, oh, this is because this person is maybe going through something?
No, I think I'm just, like, because this girl is, like, very, I don't want to say insecure in a bad way, but, like, she kind of is.
Okay.
And, like, in a most respectful way, which, like, you try and help her with. You're like, no, you're good. You just kind of validate her. Which I knew that, so I'm like, this is just one of her moments. And, like, I don't know how to help her sometimes. You know what I mean? You're just like, no, I'm not mad.
Yeah.
Just kind of really tired right now.
Yeah. I mean, your energy is the other half of that. Sorry, Frank, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, setting a boundary is a very, it's a very good step. Because, like, what you just did there was, like, setting a boundary with this person going, like, oh, okay, well, like, I can't really deal with this today or something. But, like, it's still really good. Because what you're doing is you're showing that this is a normal reaction to kind of, like, that spiraling moment. So just going, like, okay, well, you know what? Like, maybe I need to not immediately overwhelm somebody and, like, find a way to, like, get the help I need without, like, just dumping it.
Definitely. Matt, what do you think about? Like, how have you heard about depression? How do you understand it? And do you have any experiences with it?
I mean, personally, it's going to sound super ignorant because, I mean, obviously on social media and stuff like that, you'd hear about depression. It's like, oh, it just makes you sad. But, I mean, it's just kind of a it's definitely a wider spectrum than just being like, oh, you're just sad. Like Frank said, like you're just sad and mopey. You don't want to like do things. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes a lot out of people just to like, I don't know, say you're in that state of like depression. It takes a lot out of people just to even like, I don't know, go hang out with friends because you feel like, I don't even know, because I mean I've never experienced it myself, or I mean my sister experiences depression, but I don't know to what extent, because I mean I don't really talk to her about that or any of my friends like that, because it's just, I don't know.
It's a personal thing, and
Yeah.
I understand I know exactly what you're saying. You don't want to overstep boundaries, and you don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable because, you know, it could be a traumatic thing for that. You don't want to bring it up. You don't know where they're at in that moment. Like, hey, let's talk about this thing that I don't know where you're at with. It's a difficult thing to gauge. And they're difficult conversations to have. So yeah, I get that.
But I mean, one thing that I always do, like, I tell my friends if they're going through anything, I'm just like, it doesn't matter what time it is or anything like that. I mean, if you need me and like call me or whatever, like I'd much rather talk to you and hear about your problems than, well, not being here at all. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'd much rather. I mean, they might think of it as like, oh, like I might be putting a burden on them. But it's just like, nah, I'd much rather hear about it than, I don't know, I'd just much rather. I don't know, try to like talk out those experiences. Well, either talk them out or just trying to. It's not even like flip it. It's just more of a, I don't know, like help them with the situation rather than just, I don't know, just pushing it off and just being like, oh, I don't want to hear this, because I just find that it just be rude and insensitive, because I mean you don't know what they're going through. Like,
If you have a friend or family member or someone you care about that's going through something, you know, you're gonna be empathetic. You're gonna want to be there for them. You know, that's, you know, how it should be. I mean, but yeah, that's okay. And so you don't have any personal experiences with depression, that you don't feel it yourself, or you haven't? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly say I haven't experienced anything like that, because I don't know, the things I'm hearing from other people and stuff like that. It's like I've never personally felt that or anything like that. I mean, but I'm also very open with all like, well, the people that mostly my friends. I'm just very open. Like I'll talk about like literally anything, because I don't know. I just see my friends as like a safe place to just like, I don't know, talk about your problems.
Right. Okay, I hear you. I'll talk about my own experiences with depression. Like something you said reminded me, like, oh yeah, that's similar to me. I feel like depression, for me, I do experience it, and it's always felt like something that comes in waves almost, and I don't want to say seasonal, because it is worse in the winter. I mean, so there is a seasonal aspect to it, but even in summer, like, it comes and goes. You know what I mean? And it's frustrating for me to try to think about and talk about, because, you know, it's something that I've felt was always there, but, you know, to a lesser degree some days, to more severe degrees some other days. And depression, it's not just sadness or deep sadness. It's, you lose interest in the things you care about, or the things that you were interested in sorry. For me, I'm interested in filmmaking, like boxing, photography, things like that. And I always know when it's coming, when I don't care to do these things, and I just don't have the motivation or energy to like get my gloves on or go get a new roll of film or things like that. You know, I just don't care anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, it'll come back. And when my interest does start to come back in these things, that's when I know, like, okay, maybe I'm feeling a bit better. I'm ready to go back. And like, it's very intuitive for me. Like I feel it, and I know based on motivation, because, you know, I was just trying to think at one point, like, how can I be doing something like every single day, 7 days a week, like for at least 4 hours, and one for however long, and then a month later, I just don't care. I'm completely let go of the interest, and, like, you know, I just can't get back into it. So that's how I experienced depression, and how I cope. I only talked about my experience and not how I understand it, but I feel like how I understand it was kind of clear in how I spoke about my own experience.
Yeah.
And how I cope with that is, I look for different ways. It's tough because part of my interest is in boxing, for example, and working out is something that usually makes me feel better, but it's kind of, I don't know how to, like, what's the word? Like, the depression stops me from wanting to work out, but working out would, like, probably alleviate it. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's like a negative feedback loop. Yeah, that's a good, thank you, Kieran. Kieran, on camera duty, thank you. So I do, working out is one for me. I find journaling and writing things down just to get it out. Because sometimes you have things to say and no one to say them to, you know? And I think a lot of people just wallow in that and they'll think about it. And I say people in general, but it's been my experience that, you know, I just, like what you were saying, I just kind of sit in it, wait for it to pass. But at a certain point, I was like, I have to be more proactive in how I deal with this, because if this is how life is going to be, just a constant cyclical, like cycles of depression, it's not how things should be. So, like journaling, doing art. I feel like I haven't tried painting, but I feel like it's a very relaxing thing. I like going on walks, like just by the water. It's nice to clear the mind. Like just doing things and taking things slow and really just being in the present moment is enough for me to start to feel better. Just like a 20-minute walk, because a lot of the time my depression is. I find it to do a lot to like assignments and schoolwork and the pressure that comes with performing well in certain areas, and you know, that's how I cope. That's how I try to deal. But let's move on to loss and grief. The same question: how do you guys think about it? And if you have a firsthand experience or someone you know who has a firsthand experience, you're welcome to share. Don't feel the need to. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Louise, we'll start with you.
Again, okay. With loss, I feel like a lot of people lose things. So like there's like different scales to it. So like before this podcast, I was talking about my Barbies, and that was very hurtful. I had a whole bunch of Barbies, and my mom was like, "You're too old," and then she gave them all away. But I had these really cool Barbies, Barbie houses, Barbie accessories. There was a lot of money that went into that, and I cherished them, and I would sacrifice my life for them. And then she was like, "You're too old, so we're gonna give them away."
Just chuck them in the bin.
And then we sent it off to another family, and I'm like, okay, like good for them, but also like they're gonna destroy my Barbie dolls. I had so many memories with them. And then I lost my cat, who I found out was stolen from me.
So you didn't even lose him. Someone stole it from you.
Yeah.
Oh
I don't have them anymore.
Okay, no, no. I was thinking like.
I was felt grief.
Yeah.
And then the bigger loss was like I lost my grandmother. Like she died when I was in grade 6, and then it was like rough.
Were you close with her?
Yeah, I was really close.
How did you deal with that? I mean, I'm gonna focus on the ground if you don't mind. But
Oh yeah.
How did you cope?
With the Barbies, I just kind of like, with the cat, I was like, oh, that sucks. But with my grandmother, it was like, everybody was affected. Like nobody cared about my Barbies. Sorry, I keep going back to the Barbies. But everybody like.
Whatever you want to talk about.
You don't have to minimize it yourself either. It's like the emotions you felt were legitimate. So it's like you don't have to knock it down.
Thanks for the validation. With my grandmother, it was like everybody loved her. She was the best.
Right.
And then she was gone. But the thing was like also like, I feel like it's like when you lose something, it's easier to say goodbye. And the thing was like I didn't know that my grandmother was sick. Like it all happened like literally overnight. Like my grandfather called my dad and was like, yo, like your mom needs to go to the hospital. So then they spent the day with her. And I was like, okay, like we didn't know. Like me and Chris, my brother, thought we were just going to school and like he was going to work. We came home that night and he was like, bad news, guys. Of course he was more sad. But he was like, bad news, guys. And then we found out the news. And then we went out, like, he was like, you guys don't have to go to school tomorrow. But we didn't want to sit in that house because in our house it was so dark and sad.
Yeah.
So it was like you go somewhere to get distracted.
Right.
And then from then on, that's like I think when my depression started. Back
Okay.
to the old thing.
Well, no, that's exactly why we're talking about both of these things because,
Yeah.
I mean, depression is a stage in the grief process, you know.
Yeah.
So it feeds into it, and I mean, oftentimes grief and loss is a direct cause of a depression that follows. So, yeah.
Yeah. So then now like I can talk to like about my grandmother to my mom, but the moment I talk, because it was my father's mom,
Right.
the moment I talked about my dad, like talk to my dad, it feels real.
Oh,
Like
okay.
it never felt real that she was gone until I started talking to my father. I'm like, that's your mother, and I feel awkward now.
Yeah.
And then like from then on, like it was like, oh, it's just
What
coping.
I'm hearing from you, Louise, is that you cope oftentimes by removing yourself from a space, like you know.
I remove myself from everything.
Okay.
Like if there's something bad,
Yeah.
I'm gone.
Okay.
If there's something sad or serious,
Mm-hmm.
peace out, homie.
I see.
You ain't gonna catch me there.
Okay. Frank, what about you? How do you how do you conceptualize grief? If you have any experience with it, you
Yeah.
can share.
Well, I mean, when it comes to like grief and loss, it takes a lot of different forms. Like Louise was saying, it's not just the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a circumstance as well, a loss of actual physical objects.
Yep.
From the time that I was 4 years old up until I was 16, I had moved around roughly once a year.
Okay.
So, and when I say moving around, I don't just mean like, oh, Verdun to Villemard or something like that. No. It's like Montreal to Texas to Ontario to New Jersey to France at some point. Like,
Damn.
coming up with a new group of friends every time.
Mm-hmm.
Packing up my life experiences of the area, going there every time. There's no continuous string.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to say bye to like 8 different pets throughout that time. Wait. Okay, no, about 6.
Okay.
Yeah. And some of those stories were a lot worse than some others. But the worst, well, I'd say like one of the more marking moments was when I turned 16. I was told the day before we moved that we were moving. And I didn't even I had maybe the night of to say goodbye to friends I had for 3 years. That was the longest time I'd ever stayed in a place.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
when we moved, we threw away like 95% of our stuff in just like a giant bin, shipped it away. Pictures I'd had since I was a kid, toys I'd had since I was a kid, like minor, like what sounds like minor things, but still, when you add all of it up,
Yeah.
it's-
No.
But, like you have
I have
memories with those things.
absolutely
Yeah.
no mementos of my childhood. The only one that remains is a comic that I drew when I was 12 that my brother has. That's it.
But they, like I get it. Like they're a piece of your identity that like I just now like.
He's
lost.
more stable. I prefer it being with him.
Yeah.
Gives me an excuse to go see him and say hi to the birds. Shout out to Caucas, coolest cockatiel. But okay, so so talking more about personal loss. I don't remember my grandparents. They died when I was very little. But I lost my stepfather, who I had an unhealthy, abusive relationship with when I was, he died when I was about 20. So that affected me and my family members quite a bit. It was our first loss in the nuclear family, so to speak. The immediate family. And we all had different ways of coping, but the only one I felt really had a context with me was my older brother, Mike. And, very grateful that he was there for me during that time. And all my other family just either had different contexts or just lived totally far away from me, so I couldn't really like share in that experience with them. But I didn't know about. There were certain things that happened in the family that I was made aware of later, and that created another sense of loss, because at that point it was a loss of foundation. Because when you trust somebody that is a pillar for you, as parents usually are, everybody has different pillars in their life. Some people it's like their older siblings. Some people it's like aunts and uncles. But like in my case, it was my parents, and when I lost one of them in different ways, it caused me to feel like I had to reevaluate everything. Okay. And from that point on, it became very difficult to fully trust in other people, and that's something that like is a condition on me that I have to continuously keep track of and work through. It's not something that I feel like is ever going to go away.
Okay.
It's become part of me at this point. So how do I cope with that? Very good question. I cope by telling myself that I need to always keep it up and keep going, because I can't let the people who inflicted harm on me, I can't let them win, so to speak. So one of the very prevalent emotions when you're dealing with things like loss, betrayal, depression, is anger. There's various ways you can express this. I luckily have a guitar, so I'm able to use music to an extent. But when you don't express your rage, you bottle it up, and then it explodes on somebody. Somebody who doesn't need to have it exploded on them. Nobody needs to be the object of like years and years of accumulated rage.
Definitely.
So that's where the kind of like drive and ambition to to keep going kind of kicks in, because it's a healthy use of my anger.
Right.
And I use the word rage because it's really like that intense. And there's other experiences that gave me that same kind of feeling over time, that feeling of like being, having that power taken away from you. And every time it happens, you learn more and more how to not let it happen again.
Right. So learning from your experiences and
and sharing stories with people, because that's throughout human history, that's been one of the most important things that we've had, is the ability to share stories of people, to share our experiences. So I luckily work in a field where I've been able to do that to some extent. So I'm very grateful for that. But for anybody who's not in that field, find a way to share your story. Share your story with people.
Thank you for sharing your story now, Frank. That's everything you said was very valuable, and there were a lot of different things that you mentioned that I think people could use, because I heard some things that I think that I can use, so I'm sure that there are, whoever that this reaches, it'll be the same for them. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Matt, what about you? How do you think about grief, loss? Do you have an experience with it?
The only experiences I can really think of is like when I was younger, like I was like, I think I was about 7. Like my grandmother passed away. I was sad in like the moment and stuff like that, but it's never something that like, I don't know, like lingered, because I was 7 years old. Like I didn't know her for as long as like, say, like as my older sister, or like my cousin who's a bit older than me. Like they got to, enjoy her presence more than I did. But I don't know, there was that experience. When my cousin's grandfather passed away, that one kind of hit like a different level, because every time like they had like a place up north that we'd go visit like somewhat often. Like we would just like go hang out and just talk and stuff like that. when he passed, I mean, I was heartbroken, man. It was just crazy because I don't know, I had like a really good, I guess like kind of like a friendship with him because I don't know, it's just someone else rather than like I don't know the normal people that I usually hang out with and stuff like that. But again, it's not like it's anything that's like really stuck with me to be like, oh, like I've experienced, like if I'm suffering from like depression or anything like that. It's just I don't know, something that just happened along the way. But I don't know. I guess one way you can like cope with that is just stay busy. Really, just try to, I don't know, just try to do something. Just, like whether it's either listening to music, I don't know, watching shows, talking to other people, going for a walk. Just like try to keep your mind, well, not focused on that. Just try to, well, alleviate that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like using that. I mean, it's difficult at the beginning, but eventually, once you're in the right place to do so, to use that energy and like put it into other pursuits and other things. Is
Yeah.
that yeah?
Yeah, definitely like similar to that. Because I mean, for me personally, I listen to a lot of music. I mean, it's not like I use it to cope. I don't know. I just really enjoy music, and you can kind of get lost into the story of whether it's an album, a song, or anything like that, or even podcasts. Like, actually, podcasts would probably be a great way to cope for people because I mean, I watch like a weekly podcast, and they're always like, it just feels like. I mean, obviously, you don't know these people personally, but it feels like you're a part of like that friend group. You know, like it just feels like you're there, and that's something I really enjoy just doing. So I can just I don't know keep my mind off of like I don't know small things that I'm probably just gonna like freak out about. But yeah,
Yeah, I get you. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll move on to my experience, but I can relate to something you said. I lost someone close to me somewhat recently, and it's tough. It's tough. I'm still going through it. It's not easy. And to your point, like the day it happened, I just couldn't do anything but watch movies, like over like several. Like I watched 3 movies that day, I think, just to get my mind anywhere else. Yeah, it's really difficult, and it's my first experience with significant loss, and I can see the stages. I mean, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and eventually acceptance. But it's very difficult to go through, and yeah, I don't know. It's the intensity of that pain feels like the accumulation of the love you had for that person. That's, I guess, how I've been able to think about it and try to, I guess, feel better about it because, you know, when you lose someone close to you, it hurts because you had love for this person or whatever emotion. But yeah, so I will say that it's better having to. It's cliche, but I do try to remind myself because I mean, it's easy to pinpoint what cliches are before you actually experience something, and then after it, I guess they're cliches for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was
So
gonna say.
the cliche that I'm referring to is it's better to have loved at all than to or what is it? Someone
It's better to have
I
loved
messed
and
it up.
lost than not to have loved at all.
Yeah. And with that, Frank, thank you for closing us off. I feel like that
Actually,
is a
I would like to give another like happy little closing statement.
sure.
So, just to tie everything up, there's a lot of like there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of like despair. There's a lot of like darkness. You know, just using I can't think of a better word, but just but it being there allows you to highlight all the beauty that is everywhere, all the joy that's around us. It's just highlighted even more by the fact that all these really like heavy feelings and heavy things we go through are around us. It allows us to.
It's okay, keep going.
Yeah, it allows us to enjoy. It allows you to enjoy your working out. It allows you to enjoy writing. It allows you to enjoy the next time you get a Barbie and you're just like, yes. Like you cherish your things with like more, more gusto because of that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how you handle your relationships any more different from there, but it sounds like, you're there for your friends.
Yeah.
You're there for people who are going through something you went through. And like, just anything. Like that's helped shape who you are.
You're like more mindful. And, like,
Yeah,
grateful for
definitely.
everything.
Yes.
So, if it helps to listen to some really sad music and to, see a really sad story, and if that's what gets you through, then do it. But like, everything looks brighter after.
Definitely.
Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this episode. I'm sure that the people watching this, and I can speak for myself, it's very appreciated that you shared what you shared today, so thank you again.